You see the headlines everywhere, right? AI is going to completely revolutionize medicine. But from a health informatics perspective, what's really happening on the ground? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and critically appraise the true state of AI in drug development. So, let's start with some of the most impressive evidence out there.
On the one hand, you have these absolutely extraordinary numbers. Get this. AI-native biotech firms are reporting a remarkable 90% success rate in their phase 1 safety trials. To put that into perspective, that's nearly double the historical industry average, which has hovered around 52%. So clearly, AI is getting something very, very right in the early stages. But then, on the other hand, you hear this. It's a deeply sobering quote from an industry CEO. And it really captures a widespread sense of frustration. Despite those early wins, there's this strong feeling that AI has, so far, failed to deliver on its biggest, grandest promises. So, what's the real story?
And that really brings us to the central question of our analysis today. Are we in the middle of a genuine revolution, or is it time for a pretty serious reality check? To get to the bottom of that, we need to appraise the evidence systematically. So, first things first, we're going to start with a thematic synthesis. Basically, let's map out exactly how and where AI is being used across the entire drug development pipeline, from the very first idea all the way to final monitoring. Now, what's really striking when you look at it this way is just the sheer breadth of where AI is being applied. It's pretty much everywhere. In the early stages of discovery, you've got companies like in silico using AI to identify brand new drug candidates in a tiny fraction of the traditional time. And then you go further down the line, and you see AI helping to make the trials themselves just run better. This covers everything from tools like the NIH's Trial GPT, which accelerates patient recruitment by 40%, to creating what are called synthetic control arms that can reduce the need for placebo groups, making trials faster and way more efficient. A key concept that makes a lot of this possible is something called in silico trials. It's a fancy term, but it really just means running clinical trials on a computer. By using AI to create these virtual patient populations, researchers can simulate how a drug might work, testing all kinds of different scenarios to predict its safety and effectiveness before ever enrolling a single human patient. You can imagine how much time, money, and risk that saves. Okay, so the promise is clear. It's huge. But now we get to the critical part of our appraisal, weighing that promise against the actual real-world performance. And this is where the story gets a lot more complicated. As you probably know, drug development is an absolutely grueling journey. It's often visualized as a funnel for a good reason. Phase I is all about safety. Phase 2 starts to look for the first signs of efficacy. Does the drug actually work? Phase 3 then confirms that efficacy in a huge population. And finally, Phase 4 monitors the drug out in the real world. The tough part? At every single one of these stages, drugs can, and most of them do, fail. And this slide just illustrates the core problem perfectly. Remember that incredible 90% success rate in Phase 1 for AI-designed drugs? Fantastic. But look what happens right after. We hit Phase 2, the first real test of whether a drug actually works in patients. And the success rate just nosedives to below 30%. This is the great chasm. It is the primary bottleneck where most drugs fail. It marks the shift from predicting a molecule's safety, which is a relatively contained problem, to predicting its efficacy in a vastly complex biological system. That's a whole different ballgame. So the really crucial point is this. Despite all the amazing gains and efficiencies on the front end, the pharmaceutical industry's overall clinical failure rate, that's the number of drugs that start trials but never make it to market, is still stubbornly high, right around 90%. That big, scary number hasn't really improved in a meaningful way. So why is this happening? Well, the biggest hurdle, the one that really defines that Phase 2 bottleneck, is biology itself. AI is exceptional at making processes faster within known parameters, but it can't fundamentally change the unpredictable, messy complexity of the human body. And beyond that core challenge, you have these critical methodological issues. AI is only as good as its data, right? Well, 68% of tech executives point to poor data quality as the main reason their AI initiatives fail. And then there's the famous black box problem. If scientists and regulators can't validate how an AI reached its conclusions, it creates a huge barrier for scientific trust and regulatory approval. Now, these methodological and biological challenges have definitely not gone unnoticed. So let's take a look at the new regulatory landscape that's rapidly taking shape because of them. Just look at this timeline. You can see how quickly things are moving. Regulatory action has accelerated dramatically just in the last couple of years. Starting in 2023, you had both the FDA in the US and the European Medicines Agency releasing discussion papers and draft guidance. And this is all building towards major new rules, like the EU AI Act's provisions, which will become applicable in August 2026 and will classify many of these AI tools as high risk.
And across all these new frameworks, a really clear set of core principles is starting to emerge. Regulators are demanding a risk-based approach, which just means the higher the AI's potential impact on a patient, the more scrutiny it's going to get. There's a huge emphasis on data quality, integrity, and traceability. They're calling for solutions to the black box problem through transparency and explainability. And finally, they're mandating continuous monitoring and, crucially, human oversight.
So let's put all of this together. We've seen the promise, we've seen the pitfalls. What's the most reasonable and critical outlook for AI in drug development?
Well, the consensus that seems to be forming is a verdict of disciplined optimism. And I think that really nails it. This isn't about hype, and it's not about cynicism. It's about acknowledging the very real, tangible progress that's been made, while also staying grounded about the immense challenges that are still ahead.
So here's the key takeaway. AI has proven it can master the front end of this process. It can dramatically speed up preclinical work and design molecules that are much more likely to be safe in phase 1. But, and this is a big but, it has not yet solved the ultimate test of drug development, proving that a drug is effective within the complex biological system of the human body. That's the core challenge of phase 2 and phase 3. And that leaves us with this final provocative question. AI has learned the language of chemistry and can design a drug, but can it ever truly master the deep, complex, and often unpredictable grammar of human biology? The answer isn't here yet. It's out there, waiting to be discovered in the next wave of clinical trial results.